permit also contains 316B requirements. Those are the intake structure requirements. EPA has established a rulemaking in 2014 requiring additional requirements for cooling water intake structures. As part of this regulatory framework, they have established a national standard of what's the best technology available. And the proposed permit includes requirements for gathering the information over the next permit cycle. Specifically, the company will be required to do some biological characterizations, and also, since they have a flow greater than 125 million gallons per day, conduct an entrainment study. And this information is going to be required prior to the reissuance of the next permit. During the public comment period, which ran from July 6th to July 21st, 2016, there were 730 commenters, including the applicant and some who submitted multiple comments. 597 of these comments came in the form of a form letter that did not address the draft permit. 2 other form letters with 119 and 6 comments, respectively, provided comments germane to the draft permit. Original comment letters came from 22 citizens, 6 NGOs, a state senator, and the chair of the Soil and Water Conservation District. Notice of the draft permit and the public hearing was published in the Richmond Times-Dispatch on July 6th, July 13th, in the Style Weekly on July 8th, 2016, and June 8th, 2016, and June 15th, 2016. The public hearing was held on July 6th, 2016, with Chairman Dunn serving as the hearing officer. Approximately 75 people attended the public hearing. 18, including the applicant, provided oral comments. And I previously just mentioned this slide. The staff identified 9 major areas of concern as a result of the comments received. I'm going to go through each of those on an individual basis. Many commenters cited groundwater protection or the effect of sea level rise in requesting removal or remote disposal of the ash contained in the ponds. Closure of these contaminants is governed and addressed by the final rule for disposal of coal combustion residuals. Closure includes the method of closure will be addressed in future waste actions, which include additional groundwater monitoring, surface water monitoring, and corrective actions necessary. Regardless of the method of closure, it will still be necessary to draw down and dewater the ash ponds, and it will still be necessary to develop and install and operate treatment systems to replace the functions currently performed by the lower ash pond. Therefore, the draft permit is still necessary. We have numerous comments associated with the technology-based limits. Citing the Bremo and Possum Point facility, commenters posed various requests for more stringent, case-by-case, technology-based limits on the discharge associated with the proposed ash pond closure and long-term facility operations. Several commenters requested that DEQ impose drinking water standards on the effluent. Others requested that DEQ reevaluate the TSS limit imposed during the drawdown in dewatering, and others required additional treatment of the wastewater subject to the effluent guidelines. DEQ believes that this facility is regulated under the federal effluent guidelines and standards for steam electric power generating point sources. As DEQ staff believes that FEGs apply to these wastewaters authorized by the proposed permit, there is no need to establish or apply case-by-case specific technology-based limits for this facility. In addition, the federal rule for this industry, which was updated and published in November 2015, recognized that legacy wastewaters, and specifically the types of waters that were associated with the drawdown and dewatering, are addressed in this rule. And EPA concluded that the TSS technology-based limits that are in the rule are appropriate. As far as imposing drinking water quality effluent limits, DEQ does not have the authority to impose drinking water quality effluents on a processed water discharge. Also, applying water quality-based limits established for the Greenville or Possum Point permit would not be appropriate because they really need to be determined on a site-specific basis. We did look at the TSS limits in Outfall 001 and reevaluated those to reduce it to be consistent with the limits of the wastewater streams historically discharged through the Lower Ash Pond in 004. I just might point out or re-emphasize that the operation of the facility is such that there's multiple levels of treatment, especially for those 300 series of internal outfalls that all have to go through that low-lying wastewater treatment. Commenters objected to mixing zones, tidal assumptions, or any other factors accounting for dilution of treated wastewater. Commenters also expressed concerns about endangered species, downward drinking water supplies, and other human health concerns, and potential effects of the discharge on subsistence fishermen. Again, the permit limits are designed to be protective of the Virginia water quality standards, which establish beneficial uses for all waters in the Commonwealth, and the narrative and numeric criteria necessary to ensure water quality is maintained and protected. Those beneficial uses include recreation, that is the swimming and boating, propagation and growth of a balanced indigenous population of aquatic life, wildlife, and protection of edible and marketable natural resources. These water quality standards were adopted as regulations and represent the best available science to ensure protection of water quality. The water quality standards also include criteria to protect aquatic life from acute and chronic exposure. The standards also include criteria to prevent human health impacts from the consumption of fish for a period of years. If the effluent limits that are based on acute and chronic criteria are attained, then aquatic life in the receiving stream will be fully protected and consistent with the water quality standards. Finally, I just want to point out that the water quality standards authorize the board to use mixing zone concepts and evaluate the limitations related to these permits. DEQ and NPS permitting authorities in other states routinely using mixing zones in writing permits. This next slide contains a table showing the mixing assumptions from the current permit to those that we're going to be using in the proposed permit. In the proposed permit, based on the lot in response to what we developed with the Green and Possum Point facilities, we took a more conservative approach. For example, for the cooling water discharges, both the acute and chronic mixing ratios were 2:1. Cooling water for 003, no mixing was assumed. Again, for the treatment plant associated with the drawdown and dewatering, 2:1 was assumed for both the acute and chronic values. For the low volume waste, we treated that as we would a free-flowing stream because that discharge is associated with the cooling water discharge. The flow rate, or the dilution ratio is 9.5:1 once the low volume wastewater treatment plant is constructed. And this discharges via outfall 301. This mixing ratio is based on the critical flows for outfall 003. There's a permit condition that does not allow a discharge from outfall 301 when the flows for outfall 003 are below the critical value of 50 gallons per day. For the lower ash pond, no mixing was assumed with the schedule of compliance. And for the upper ash pond, 005, again, a 2:1 mixing was assumed both for the acute and chronic toxicity. As far as the permit contains a number of compliance schedules associated with the new federal effluent guidelines for the steam electric power generation. Several commenters expressed concern with the schedule of compliance in the draft permit and requested more stringent limits under a shorter time frame. In the federal effluent guidelines for the steam electric, EPA defined as soon as possible as November 1, 2018, unless the permitting authority establishes a later date based on the information from the discharger. That information included time to expeditiously plan, design, procure, and install the equipment, changes being made or planned at the treatment in response to regulations that address the disposal of coal ash combustion residuals of solid waste, initial commissioning period for a flue gas desulfurization treatment system to optimize the installed equipment, and finally other factors as appropriate. As the lower ash pond is currently utilized to provide wastewater treatment for several waste streams in addition to the wet handling of the ash, Dominion has submitted documentation to DEQ outlining a schedule of multiple construction activities necessary to complete the conversion of the ash handling while providing wastewater treatment to the existing waste streams, as well as meet the effluent guidelines promulgated in the federal requirements. Given this, DEQ believes that the proposed permit has established schedules that represent as soon as possible for these technology-based limits. Several commenters requested more frequent testing of the chemical parameters, whole effluent, toxicity, or both. Other commenters requested ambient monitoring or third-party sampling, and at least one commenter objected to the test methods allowed under the permit. Commenters also expressed concern about PCB monitoring at the facility and requested a broader sampling program for this parameter. For the drawdown and dewatering of the lower ash pond and the upper ash pond, the sample collection and analysis including the wet testing, is being performed about at the maximum frequency that samples can be collected, analyzed, and reported, and then decisions can be made in accordance with those results. More frequent testing would not enhance the environmental protection in staff's opinion. For the longer-term operation of the facility, we need to remember that there are a number of ponds being provided as part of the treatment technology. As such, the use and characteristics of the effluent would not change quickly. A more frequent sampling would not necessarily provide useful information, again, about the operation of the system. Permit requirements for both chemical and biological tests stipulate methods that are consistent with other DEQ permits issued by DEQ and have been previously approved by EPA during the draft permit review. staff strives to ensure that the monitoring requirements of the permit will demonstrate whether the facility's effluent complies with the limits contained in the permit and that the monitoring is performed in a scientifically sound manner. In particular, concerns about synergistic effects of multiple pollutants should be satisfactorily addressed by the requirement for the whole effluent toxicity testing. And that's the primary basis for that program, is that you can't test for every single parameter. The DEQ program is a self-monitoring program under the Clean Water Act. DEQ performs inspections of facilities and collects samples from the facility as necessary. DEQ permits are also required to submit monthly discharge monitoring reports. These reports contain summary of the facility's self-monitoring results and are reviewed by DEQ's compliance staff. In addition, DEQ is committed to follow up on any inquiry or complaints received regarding the facility's operation. Once the conversion of the facility from wet ash to dry ash handling is completed and all new treatment works are constructed, all the non-cooling water processed and some of the site stormwater will be discharged through outfall 301. So it is unnecessary for this proposed permit to require PC monitoring anywhere else without that outfall. The facility is also covered under an industrial stormwater general permit, and DEQ will notify Dominion of the need to monitor PCBs at the relevant outfall registered under this general permit. We received comments that hazardous materials are currently being discharged in the Parabet. Several commenters remarked to the effect that coal ash contains a variety of heavy metals and that the ash ponds discharge, including centispheres, that fail to settle in the lower ash pond, it would be expected that this would occur. Other commenters specifically cited a study performed by Duke University professor and a sampling event performed by the James River Association on behalf of the Hands Across the Lake, and requested that DEQ investigate and respond to one or both of these studies. I'd just like to note the first bullet is really, once these ponds are going down and dewatering occurs, the source of the pollutants that are the object of these comments will be eliminated. The staff did look at the Duke study. The in-stream samples showed no exceedances of any applicable water quality criteria for the metals analyzed. DEQ questions the sampling and analysis that was associated with the James River Association data. That being said, that data did indicate water quality violations for arsenic, chromium, and lead at one location near outfall 004. Importantly, as a result of reviewing this data, DEQ conducted its own sampling. Our samples were collected on July 28, 2016, using clean metal sampling techniques. It's important that clean sampling metal techniques be utilized, especially when you're talking about the low levels being found in the receiving streams. Samples were taken from outfall 004 and for locations approximating those listed in the JRA sampling units. Now, these samples were analyzed for both total dissolved and total recoverable metals. The analysis of the in-stream sample showed no exceedance of any metal water quality criteria. Selenium and thallium levels in outfall 004 were higher than the surface water criteria for those parameters. Just note that these parameters are going to be limited in the proposed permit and are subject to a schedule of compliance. The reason these limits are being established is because of changes the staff made in some of the mixing assumptions, which reduced the available mixing from 31 to 1 to 0 mixing. It's important to note that the current samples collected by DEQ in ferret gut, as close to outfall 004 as practicable, did not show any water quality criteria exceedances for these parameters. Additionally, DEQ is planning to take additional sampling this fall. We want to further confirm the results of our study. I can't see it. You can see it up here. This sheet just shows the sampling locations. There are 4 sampling locations, one from outfall 004, and then 3 in Farragut, and 1 at the on the James River, where Farragut enters the James River. Here are the sampling results. Again, what we did here, remember the water quality standards, some of those standards change based on hardness. So for each sampling event, you could have a slightly different water quality standard. We just took the lowest water quality standard for each parameter based on the hardness, and that's what's shown on the last line prior to that dark black bar. And as you can see, all the stream samples were below the water quality standards. Quite a few of those were less than the kilo. Again, for outfall 004, we did see levels for selenium and thallium in the outfall that were above the criteria. And those are listed on the sheet. Several commenters objected to the presence of centispheres in the discharge from outfall 004 and the placement of containment booms below the outfall. Centispheres are the stand-sized hollow spheres produced as a byproduct of coal combustion. Centispheres typically consist of inert silica and alumina and are used in the manufacture of a variety of products. Although no additional permit provisions are proposed. DEQ will work with Dominion to minimize the discharge of centispheres until the discharge from outfall overfall is terminated. You might note during the site inspection on August 19th, Dominion was observed staging equipment to collect centispheres from the surface of the lower ash pond. Commenters asserted that 316A thermal discharge variance violates the Clean Water Act, and further cooling the ambient temperature or elimination of the discharge by converting to a closed-loop system is needed. Further, the nature of the thermal discharge violates Virginia's anti-degradation policy and poses a threat to sturgeon. Staff finds no regulatory basis to require Dominion to cool the discharge water to match the temperature of the river prior to the discharge. Virginia Water Quality Standards authorize the use of 316A thermal variances and recognize that the conformance with 316A of the Clean Water Act is in compliance with the mixing zone requirements of the Virginia Water Quality Standards. In addition, the Water Quality Standards further recognize that any determination concerning thermal discharge limitations made under 316A are considered to be in compliance with the anti-degradation policy. However, in response to comments, DEQ staff have added language to the proposed permit requiring Dominion to update the 2003 study analysis to support the renewal of the 316A thermal variance during the next permit cycle. The special condition requires that the update of the original 316A thermal variance study be performed on the schedule as the 316B cooling water intake structure infant and mortality and treatment studies. Special considerations involving the presence of spawning Atlantic sturgeon in the city of Chesterfield power plant will be concurrently addressed by these outlaws. It is proposed that the 316A and 316B studies both be submitted 9 months prior to the permit expiration, allowing for a comprehensive evaluation of any impacts of the Chesterfield power station on Atlantic sturgeon. Citing the impingement of Atlantic sturgeon, commenters stated that additional 316B requirements are necessary, including the elimination of withdrawal by converting to a closed-loop system. In accordance with the federal requirements for water intake structures, the National Marine Fisheries and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service were awarded 2 separate opportunities to provide reasonable and prudent recommendations of additional control measures for the protection of federal listed species, including any to minimize the incidental take or likely jeopardy of listed species. First was during a 60-day review period as part of the permit application, and the second was during the public comment period of the proposed permit. Neither federal agency identified additional control measures necessary for protecting federal listed T&E species, which also included the Atlantic sturgeon for DEQ's consideration. Also, as part of the requirements associated with water intake structures, this proposed permit has a condition that stipulates that nothing in this permit authorizes the take for the purposes of the facility's compliance with the Endangered Species Act. I might add that the federal guidelines for 316B allow a permit term to collect the impingement and entrainment information. And again, as part of this process, I fully expect at the time of the next application, when these studies are in, they will be provided to these federal agencies. And I would expect that we will be receiving some information pertaining to these issues. As part of this federal rulemaking, it's really this next permit cycle, after this scientific information is provided, that the agency will need to make a decision on what the best technology available is. And as part of that process, again, we'll get input. I expect us to get input from these federal agencies, as well as the fact that this will be proposed as a draft permit, so there will be additional public input as part of that process also. Finally, NOAA is proposing the designation of a critical habitat for the Atlantic sturgeon in the James River. I believe it's up to Bossier's Dam. The 316A thermal variances specifically say that they need to address the protection and propagation of a balanced indigenous population of shellfish, fish, and wildlife. In addition to that, 316B regulations, the federal regulations, at numerous locations reference the phrase designated critical habitat as part of their considerations in determining DTA. So again, I think with the next permit reissuance, there's going to be more issues coming to light in terms of what's appropriate based on the fact that sturgeons are an endangered species within the James River. And this will impact not only this facility, but other facilities that discharge into the James River. Commenters objected to contamination of groundwater, requested additional groundwater monitoring, and stated that 30 years' time is insufficient for post-closure monitoring. Again, closure in these impoundments is governed and addressed by the EPA rule on disposal of coal combustion residuals. Closure and post-closure care, including post-closure care periods under those requirements, will be addressed through closure under a separate waste permit. Cindy, or Deborah, I guess, is handing out the revised draft permit fact sheet pages. The incorrect flow was used to calculate the average and daily maximum TSS loading limits for the flue gas desulfurization only discharges. Using the flue gas desulfurization maximum 30-day average flow of 0.11 MGD, the monthly average flow was reduced from 22 kilograms per day to 12 kilograms per day. And the daily maximum limit was reduced from 72 kilograms per day to 42 kilograms per day. The revisions that were handed out are the Part 1 pages, 10 and 18, and the corresponding pages in the fact sheet of 12 and 14. If you notice on the effluent limitations page, there's also a combined flow where both the flue gas desulfurization and the landfill leachate TSS loading numbers, those have not changed because the combined flows of 0.3 mgd was a correct flow. It used a 0.11 for the flue gas recirculation and a 0.19 for the manipulation. So it was only one typo that reduced the limit. EPA was provided a revised permit documentation on June 6, 2016, and expressed no concerns regarding the draft permit. Mr. Dunn was the hearing officer at our public hearing. I don't know if you want to make any statements or have any comments.
The only thing I can say is the documentation that you provided adequately covered the comments and then the adequate responses to those comments. This time I'm looking at the next questions from the board.
Good morning. I had a question about the permit dates, and this is the first page of the 50s permit fact sheet. I was noticing that the application was complete for this on June 2nd, 2009, and then there were years of inactivity until 2015. I just wondered why the permit was not issued in 2009.
In a variety of reasons. Some of them were associated with the fact that the code, federal effluent technology-based limits, they were supposed to come out for a number of years. And part of the problem was that maybe from a timing standpoint, it would have been better to wait a little bit. In hindsight, I think we should have acted a little bit faster than we did.
Thank you, by the way, for all the information. It looks by the amount of paper we've used and received, we have really done our homework. Some of the things I took notes on, the 30 years interested me. On the handout, page 3, under the draft permit, it talks about 30 years. So I'm hoping in 30 years we know something different, we can do something different, but where are we with that? What do you do at 30 years? Apparently I missed that.
Are you referring to the monitoring associated with
On page 3 of that handout, the draft permit, it talks about 30 years of monitoring.
That's really being handled under the whole process with the solid waste permit, and those type of issues really need to be addressed as part of that permit action. I'm understanding your question.
Okay, and I do understand that is who takes care of that, but I just thought you might be able to shed a little light on that. I'm just curious.
That will be a part of the waste permit, and it's my understanding that as the waste rules operate, if at the end of 30 years there are any concerns that continue to exist, it can be extended. I'm getting some nods over here, so I think that's right. So the 30 years is a minimum, but not a maximum.
And
techniques? Were they in the same methods used?
No. We don't have a lot of detailed information. Um, It appears that the sampling in the JRA were total residual, which the standards are based on dissolve. We also have some questions about the sampling protocols. There was no indication there was any clean metal sampling techniques used, for example. And getting the weeds a little bit, I think there's some questions about the digestion associated with some of those samples. We don't have a lot of information on that, how that type of analysis that they actually do.
Do you use a certified lab to do this?
I believe the lab will be lab certified for it, yes.
Do we know what lab is?
No, we don't know what lab is. We redacted from the information.
Could you remind us scheduling additions of other funds, software, processes, and then I guess I'm also curious about the results of the study with the budget and the variance and how the land issues is proving impact, recently how those results will impact.
I can answer the second question. Presently, the facility has a thermal mixing approval. And at the time they got that approval, there was no disturbance. We're not listed as an emergency. When they submitted their application, it was not still listed. By regulation, we did not identify that as being an issue. So, because at the time it wasn't an issue. Really, our only opportunity to address this is part of this permit is to require the applicant to do that type of detailed study. And it does make a lot of sense to tie that into 316 because potentially, from a technology basis of what needs to be done, that may go hand in hand. But we really won't know that until, number one, they do that thermal analysis, and that tells us whether or not there is a thermal impact. And number two, as part of the 316B, they have to look at what impact their intake water is having on the environment. So it just makes sense to us that you do both those studies, get the scientific information, which is going to take some time. And in fact, 316B federal requirement is set up specifically to allow that type of time. So we're taking the appropriate approach, given the fact that this is an existing discharge, given the fact that the sturgeon have recently been identified as a maintenance species.
Chair, I can try to address your first question. I can't address it specifically, and I'll be taking these staff notes by addressing you all. But we have, as you know, 4 or 5 of these to be processing, and our staff are working through those. I would guess we're going to get to these as quickly as we can. There's a lot of information that has to be pulled together. I would guess it'll be winter or a little bit after before we get to this particular one.
there was a lot of information here, and I really appreciate all the detail that you put in there. But I think in a way, my brain was a little, so I'm trying to bring up